What's your one piece of advice for building specifically a food and beverage startup? It's like you have to know your why and you have to lean on it. And it's because you're going to be tested every single day. Even when you have your high of highs, there's going to be something like operational that's going to break and then you're going to have to fix it. And like all you do is, put out fire, celebrate fire. Like it's just such a roller coaster of emotions that if you don't have that why so firmly planted and you're just, hopping on a trend or putting something out there that, already exists in the world, it's going to be really, really hard when SHIT hits the fan.
Welcome to Brands for a Better World, the podcast that brings you the stories behind the people and products building a more just, healthy, and regenerative future for us all. Tune in weekly, and together, we'll learn about why these better products and brands were created, how they're helping fix broken systems, and what you can do to support them. My hope is that you'll discover some new brands to love and get some sparks of inspiration that will help you live your best life. Hi, I'm your host, Gage Mitchell, founder of Modern Species, a sustainable brand design agency helping better brands grow to scale their impact. If you like this show, please help it grow by leaving ratings and reviews on your podcast app and by sharing your favorite episodes with your friends. Maybe this will be one of them. On this episode, I'm speaking with Ashley Nickelsen, founder, CEO, and chief snack officer of B.T.R Nation, about the problem with junk food in America, why she decided to build a healthier snack company, the rules that guide her product development process, the higher prices that come with better ingredients, and how she's working to get her costs down, her recent collaboration with Blue Bottle, and much more. We then wrap up with a rapid round question segment. Enjoy!
I'm Ashley Nickelsen. I am the founder, CEO, and chief snack officer of B.T.R Nation, and we are on a mission to fix our broken food system one snack at a time. So we are reimagining the modern vending machine. That's our core thesis. Anything that can come out of a vending machine, snacks, drinks, anything is fair game for us to reimagine and to make as low sugar as possible while keeping simple, real food ingredients. So we're really trying to lead this real food movement as much as possible.
I love that. And I love the chief snacking officer too. Because I mean, what's the point of founding a company if you don't get to give yourself some funny titles, right?
Exactly. It's self-proclaimed, of course, but it's especially doing all of the R&D. I do all of our product innovation. The original recipes for the B.T.R Nation bar line came out of my kitchen. So I'm like, okay. And I'm a snacker. I'm a cereal snacker. That's I probably eat 6 to 7 snacks a day. I did have a tooth extraction last week, so that was really rough because I could only drink smoothies and it was really tough, liquid diet for a couple days. But I slowly started to incorporate the bars back in because I ate at least 2 bars a day.
Wow.
It's you gotta eat, you gotta love and eat your own product. So unless we're running low on inventory, and we do have some flavors that just sold out, so then you can't eat those, but.
Yeah, I didn't mean to laugh at the tooth extraction. I was just thinking is that because you're snacking too much?
I know, right?
Because your chief snacking officer probably means sampling all the competition and stuff too. But
no, we eat everything. I try actually in the bar set. I really don't. I mean, 99.9% of bars are absolute junk. And the chocolate set though, I do feel like there's a lot of camaraderie in chocolate because we also have our line of nut butter cups. We've got some new innovations coming down the pipeline with chocolate. But I really don't touch another bar. Sometimes I will try and I'll be super objective because it is just so hard to really hit the mark on nutrition, ingredients, taste, texture. It is as much as there's a million bar companies out there and it's the barrier to entry into the space is much lower than other product lines. It is really hard to hit the nail on the head. So we have our line of superfood nut butter bars and they're a little bit lower in protein. So they're about 7 to 10 grams of protein, more of a snack sized bar. And that's our core line that is really filling this strong need in the space where consumers are I don't really need 30 grams of protein and there's a lot of junk in there. And then I also love the Lara bars of the world, but I also want something that's not going to make me hungry in 20 minutes. I want something of substance. So we really fill that amazing gap of being this snacking brand, but we did just bring our first high protein bar to market. We've got a couple of other flavors in the pipeline, which now firmly cements us into this higher protein line. And it's called Protein Plus because it gives you 0 grams of added sugar, 15 grams of organic complete plant protein, and 500 milligrams of like our functional mushroom blend. So it's a really good like performance athlete post-workout protein bar. And then we also see our own consumers that were like, oh, this is great. And now I can have one for a snack and maybe one for more of a meal. Although we never market ourselves as like a meal replacement. As much as we love snacks, like, and snacking is the world, everyone loves to snack. I am a firm believer in like, you got to eat your meals. So snacks are just the bridge.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I have so many follow-up questions on the product line and product development, but I want to take it back to one of the first things you said about reimagining vending machines, because I know that's kind of where the story started for you, is a frustrating vending machine experience, which I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has had, right? You're in a situation where you have got limited food options. The vending machine is your best chance, and you go there and you just can't find anything you want to eat. So can you talk about your story that forced you down this path?
Absolutely. So, and I get very angry to this day with vending machines, and I travel a lot. So they're constantly in the airport. And I was stranded in Atlanta during that big global outage. And I actually had it was a very rewarding experience with someone who was standing in front of a vending machine. And it's clear she had like a child on her leg, and I have a 2-year-old. So I deeply resonate. And it's just, there were tens of thousands of people in the airport. Hartsfield is already like a mess on a good day, but this was during this global outage where, 500 flights canceled. And she was just like, looked like she was going to cry. And her kid was looking for food and lines out the door for all these restaurants. And she was standing in front of a vending machine. And I was like, what are you going to get? And she was like, I don't even know. I don't even care. This is all junk, but I just like, this is what's here. And I had bars, and I was like, okay, I'm going to, this is my brand. I'm the founder, and, no pressure to take this, but like, we are cleaning up vending machines. We're cleaning up the snack space, and it's a nut butter bar, and it's, kids love it. It's everything we do has nuts in it. So we are not a nut-free company. That's the one thing we always tell people is, you can't be everything to everyone. So that was my focus, is just trying to get clean, simple ingredients to her and her family. And she like literally, stranger, gave me a hug in the middle of the airport. She would just, it was even hard for me. I was like, well, it's going to be like TGIF or I'm just going to eat like 5 bars. And it was these experiences that people have. Like, I think we really take for granted the fact that we have healthy, better for you options at our fingertips, but what happens when we don't? And that's where my story started. Is both of my parents were diagnosed with very rare forms of cancer, and I was their primary caretaker. So I was already on like my own like wellness journey, and I was like just obsessed with like looking at products and seeing why people ate products. And I was not in the CPG space at this time, but I was just like so obsessed with like how people market their products. And I'm like, this is great. Like, this is so low sugar. And then I would flip it over and be like, maltol is the first ingredient. Like, what is that? And I have a background in biochemistry. So I was like, I feel like someone can do better at this. But I remember the moment, and my mom had passed at this point. And my mom, she was diagnosed so late in her journey that she didn't really get to see a lot of this. She just saw like tinkering in the kitchen. But my dad saw a bunch. So my mom had a leiomyosarcoma and passed away very quickly. And then my dad was diagnosed a few months after that. And he had appendiceal cancer, but he battled for a much longer time. So he battled for 3 years with it and did everything, chemo, radiation, everything possible. And I remember this moment, and it was, my dad, I think, was a chemo session or one of these sessions in a doctor's office. And I was like, he said, get me some snacks. And, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, chemo changes your taste buds. And I was like, okay, fine. And there were literally Cliff bars, Kind bars. Reese's peanut butter cups. I actually, a couple of months ago when I was back in New York, and because I'm originally from New York, and I went back to the cancer center and visited that exact vending machine and like broke down crying because it hasn't changed. This has now been years and nothing is still Pop-Tarts. Like, it's just appalling that is okay in a hospital setting where people need better options for caretakers, for patients. And, what they would tell my parents all the time is, drink and sure, it doesn't matter where you get your calories from. And I saw them at the end and, was there for the end of their lives. And it was a privilege to be able to be there and to take care of them. And there was a point where it was like calories in is all that mattered. And I did understand that. But during the beginning part of my dad's journey, it was like, who cares? Just eat whatever you want. And it was like, he was barely like feeling any symptoms. And I'm like, there's opportunity here to revamped diet and to incorporate different type of, whole nutrients and like, let's cook more and all of these things. My dad was, he was eating very healthy anyway. So he was like, yeah, I'm all for this. But we had to like seek out our own registered dietitian that was going to help him, because at the cancer center and oncologists, they were just like, whatever you want, like just enjoy, right? Like just enjoy life and quality of life, which I do understand. However, there's got to be this melding together. So, because there was a point where even all of this stuff was just making him like, my dad was a huge peanut butter cup fan. Like he would just eat like a pack of Reese's and he was just like, not like feel terrible. And I saw this and witnessed this, and I saw other patients and other caretakers, and everyone always asks the same question, like, why is there so much junk like in the doctor's lounges and in the nurse? Like no one really understands, but no one is taking on that industry. So for me, this core thesis is so important. Like we get people who ask us like, oh, are you going to make a greens powder? Are you going to make a supplement? Like I come from the supplement industry. Absolutely not. That is not, we're here to do the best that we can and create food that makes people feel good emotionally, physically, all of the things. So I took to the kitchen, and the first two recipes are cinnamon cookie dough bar, which was the one that launched into Costco. It was a cinnamon swirl bite at the time, and our dark chocolate brownie bar, which was a dark chocolate brownie bite made for my dad. And, my mom saw a little bit of it, and my dad loved it. And he loved like like almond butter, peanut butter, all of the things. So it was something that was palatable and easy to get down. So it wasn't something, because like chemo changes your taste buds and like everything's kind of metallic. So he loved it. And I was like, okay, maybe we've got something here. And I started to do some catering on the side. And then before he passed away, he worked in like the legal trademarks world. He incorporated a company for an LLC. Now we are a C Corp, but an LLC. And he said, I hope you do something with this one day. He was an entrepreneur at heart. His dream, and maybe I can fulfill it one day, was always to open up like a bagel sandwich shop that was like serving like better for you, like sandwich breads and like things from scratch. And it was his dream to do that. And I know nothing about that part of the world. So I was like, I'm going to start a snack company. And obviously this was in the middle of the pandemic. What else do you do when there's like no security and you're, and I left a 6-figure job at I was the first hire at a supplement company, loved the mission, taught myself everything about CPG and everything about e-commerce. I say CPG, but everything about the e-commerce world. We were not in retail. So the retail world is still a bit of the wild, wild west to me, but e-commerce, Amazon, and growing and building a brand. And then in the middle of the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I'm having a great time doing this, but I like to build from scratch. And I had these recipes. They were in a Google Drive, like super informal. And I've always wanted to do something on my own to fulfill their legacy, try to tell their story, and like do something to fix our food system, not like throw more supplements at people. And I said, you know what, I'm going to resign and do this. And then we launched at the very end, like soft launched end of 2020, just like with a couple thousand bars like sold out immediately, and then really came back February of 2021 as like a real company. So yeah, that's the story. And B.T.R stands for be bold, tenacious, and resilient. And that is my parents' mantra. My dad coined that. He was full of all of these different adages and just loved sharing his wisdom. And I get on my soapbox very much like he did. Both of my parents were very much like, if they were very principled. So if they had a belief about something, they had to like fix it or do something to make that change, even if they were standing alone. And that's always the principles they embodied in me. And here we are. So it's wow. My dad would be so proud. My mom, I do think on a daily basis, sometimes she might be like, this is great. Like for our Costco launch, for our upcoming launch in November, like I know she'd be so excited, but 99% of the entrepreneurial journey is really messy, and every day is, there's just a roller coaster of emotions. So I think she'd be like, go back and get a stable job. So, but my dad would be so excited, and he would be here along the journey in the warehouse, like, at demos, like he would have loved this. So.
That's amazing. It's too bad he's not here to see it. And sorry you had to go through all that, but out of dark times comes the silver lining in the clouds of a good thing that will come from it. And maybe through his experience, you were, nudged down this path, and then you'll help create a better food future for a lot more people, so they don't have to suffer the way he did with crappy vending machine options.
That is exactly my hope for this. So it's, I could not let their story, they both passed in their 50s, just way too early. And I just could not let that like stand by the wayside. And just let that, they're just like the most generous, kind people that always wanted to bring change about in the world. So I was like, okay, it's a tough world. It's a brutal industry, but we're going to do everything we can to take this and get this into as many households as possible. So.
And that probably gives you more fuel to be bold, tenacious, and resilient too, because you know what you're doing it for, right? You had that personal experience.
Yes.
You lived through, and you want to make sure that their experiences don't go in vain and that you can use that to kind of fuel the change coming.
100%. That is literally my fire. And that's anytime an entrepreneur asks me, like, what's your one piece of advice for building specifically a food and beverage startup? It's like, you have to know your why and you have to lean on it. And it's because you're going to be tested every single day. Even when you have your high of highs, there's going to be something like operational that's going to break, and then you're going to have to fix it. And like, all you do is, put out fire, celebrate fire. Like it's just such a roller coaster of emotions that if you don't have that why so firmly planted and you're just, hopping on a trend or putting something out there that, already exists in the world, it's going to be really, really hard when, SHIT hits the fan. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense and great advice too. I also love that the name comes from that bold, tenacious, resilient, but even without knowing that, it still makes sense, because it still says better.
It says better. Exactly. So that was very strategic. And we do have some people, and there might be a day when we do end up, I just don't want to lose B.T.R. So it's got to be somewhere in the essence of the name, in the packaging. It is a very long mantra. My dad did have he always had lots of, like I said, the soapbox, including myself. So just cut me off if you have any questions or I'm taking too long because I talk a lot. But it does say Better Nation, and that is exactly the goal. So there might be a day when we do end up, like Kentucky Fried Chicken goes to KFC, we might, be able to bring it back to Better Nation, and that's where we stand. I don't know if that time is yet, but we're excited that people see it and they're like, B.T.R, what is that? And they're like, oh, be bold, tenacious, and resilient. That's really cool. Or people don't even question it or care, and they're just like, Better Nation, awesome. Like this is food for, they just get it immediately. So it works both ways.
And that was me. I felt like I just thought the better. I'm like, oh, there's periods there. It must mean something, but I don't need to know it necessarily to read the whole picture. So
exactly. And especially as we move further into retail where people are not there, they most likely are going to be like Better Nation. Although I visited all of our Costco clubs and people did say B.T.R. and then they asked the question, like people are so inquisitive, especially when a founder is around or a demo is going on. People just like, they want to know everything. They want to know your story. I probably got asked, at least 500 times, like, oh, have you thought about going on Shark Tank? So it's just so people have so many ideas.
The power of Shark Tank, yeah.
Exactly. They want to, they just want to be a part of something. That's it. I think this entire world, right? Like we're all, probably watching the Olympics and like we all want to be a part of something that means something and that's bigger than us. And that is how I feel our customer base is. Even though, we're 3.5 years old, we have these like ride or die customers that it's wild to see their messages where it's like, wherever you launch, I'm going to support. Like we've had people with Costco that it wasn't even in their Costco and it was like an hour away and people drove to our Costco clubs to pick it up. It was really cool to see. And that is what I like about building D2C first for our type of product, especially given the fact that we are in, it is a saturated space. I'm not a stranger to that. There's, thousands of bars, thousands of chocolates out there. There's a lot out there in the snacking space, but there is, as long as you have your white space, like, and you see it so clearly and you have your why and you're building this brand that's not just a replica of something, you got it. So that's my advice.
Right. And that's what I feel is the power of a purpose or a mission too, right? You can certainly create a loyal brand following just off of being hip or cool or trendy or something like that, right? So there's enough people out there that are just early adopters and want to be the coolest person with a new tech gadget or something.
Exactly.
But there's also great value in just having a very clear purpose or vision, knowing your why and aligning with your customers, your partners, your community's why, so that you're all in this together and that your success is their success. And then you just build this amazing community of supporters that'll show up for you whenever you need them, right? To crush it at Costco or to get in a new chain or share a story or, connect on online or maybe help give product feedback, whatever. Like they're just there to help you make this work because they believe in the reason you're doing it.
Exactly. It's for me, it's always been my goal to not just have like something that is like trending or it just like something that's like a drop in the pot. And it's as, we do have a presence on TikTok. We have a much stronger presence on Instagram. That's definitely where our community lives. But to really create a brand that persists, right? So there's tons of, Daily Harvest is an amazing example of brands that persist in people's pantry. Like they think about it and they know, okay, if I'm going to buy Simple Mills or I'm going to buy Siete. These are brands that people just know are doing something that has a greater purpose. And that's where we want to fall. And, obviously we're much earlier than those brands, but that's where we want to live and where people think like, okay, I'm looking for a transparent, like the most transparent, honest brand that is going to share and bear it all and create something like people don't even care to look at B.T.R Nation's ingredients anymore because they, especially our existing customers, they already know what we're going to deliver because we're going to deliver on that promise every time. And that is, it's been something that we've been, fortunate to build over the past 3.5 years. Doesn't happen overnight, but it happens with time and with making sure that you're constantly fulfilling that promise and creating content around that promise. So even if it's not like the next sexy new trend, it's something that is persistent and people know it.
Right. And speaking of that promise and that transparency, you've had integrity in how you've built your current product. And maybe as you've experimented with different product categories, some of the ingredients you're using might change or some of the nutrition profiles might change. Like you mentioned, launching now protein bars, et cetera. But when you think about the brand as a core, like what are the non-negotiables for you when you set out to decide which ingredients to use or what nutrition attributes you're going to focus on, or maybe even product format? It sounds like you're staying in snacking, so maybe that's the product format, but what are those kind of guardrails you use when you think about product innovation?
Yeah. And it's a great question. And I think about it 24/7. So for us, the most important thing is that there is three things that we're covering with every product we bring to market. One is that it's got to be naturally low in sugar. So that's just something that's very important to me. I have, a family of diabetes. My grandfather, uncle, I've just seen so many people in my family have diabetes and really, really struggle. And I really want to make sure that we're providing, just struggle being able to find snacks that work for them. And I really want to make sure that we're providing a platform for people that are going through their own chronic illnesses. And the same thing that, with my parents battling cancer, I really saw them gravitate to products that were sweet, naturally sweet or artificially sweet or anything that had just a lot of sugar in it and consume so much of it and then feel sick. So that was the first thing. Right. However, there are a ton of low sugar products on the market and they're full of junk. So I don't love, big food loves to do this, right? Like zero added sugar,
right.
Naturally sweetened with stevia or something like that. And then you actually flip it over and it's the first ingredient is maltitol or sucralose or something along those lines. And like stevia is like the last ingredient. So for me, having a low sugar product does not necessarily mean being like keto or paleo. Like that's not what we're focused on. It's just low sugar because I think we've gotten away from the fact like there's this massive extreme of like people who eat keto, no sugar, no carbs. Like that's not what we're going for. Like we have nuts in our products. So our products are lower in carbs, but they're not like 0 grams of carbs. That's not what we're looking for. It's more of this balance, but low sugar was one of them. The second one is simple ingredients all the way. So we naturally sweeten, monk fruit is our exclusive sweetener for our bars. And then our chocolate, we actually just reformulated our chocolate and our chocolate, this is the first place I'm sharing this. And our chocolate starting Q4, Q1 will just be sweetened with dates. So it's, and we've just gotten so much feedback. Like monk fruit is an amazing sweetener to use. And for the bars, it gives it a little hint of sweetness. For the chocolate, we've actually had people be like, oh, this is actually like really sweet. And I'm like, okay. So I was like, this is a great opportunity for us to just sweeten with dates. Monk fruit also is insanely expensive. So expensive. So I think when people, they're like, oh, monk fruit's the same thing as like stevia. Not even close. Like it's $500 a kilo for monk fruit, where could be $11 for a kilo for erythritol. Like
Wow.
that is, or like $1 for cane sugar. Like that is the significant difference. So for us, like we're very intentional. We want to make this as accessible as possible. Like we are typically for our bars, each bar is usually somewhere between $2.49 and $2.99 on the shelf. So super accessible for that's mostly what bars live in the bar set. But our chocolate is a much higher priced item and we need to bring that price point down. So it's been fine in airports, but we already are working on bringing the price point down so we sit more comfortably on the shelf next to other chocolates that are comparable. So that is how we are launching further into retail, which is exciting. But anyway, I digress. See, I go on my soapbox all the time. So low sugar, simple ingredients. And what simple ingredients mean to us, it's very clear. We have a never ever list on our website. So we never use sugar alcohols. We never use stevia. We never use allulose. We never use we don't even use like sunflower lecithin. We never use seed oils. We never use brown rice syrup. That would fall in the sugar category. And the big one, my biggest pet peeve, we never use maltodextrin, titanium dioxide, like all of those like additives. We never use natural flavors. So I don't know if you want me to, I could go on for hours about natural flavors. It's an issue for me in our food system because 99.9% of products has natural flavors. Do I consume products with natural flavors? 100%. Like there's no way to avoid it. It is just so ingrained in our food system. It is the one ingredient, very much like fragrance in the beauty space, the one ingredient that you don't need to tell people what's in the ingredient, the sub-ingredients. Like that is just insanity to me. Like if you have, like we use MCT oil in our products, right? Like we have to say like it's MCT oil from pure coconut, right? So it's technically can also be labeled as coconut oil, but like we have to say that, right? Like that makes sense. But natural flavors, there's typically 50 to 100 sub-ingredients in a natural flavor. And it's natural in origin. So it can be from insects or plants and a lot of natural flavors do have like insect parts in them. And it's like, I mean, that doesn't sound good. Like who wants to eat that? Probably no one, but they taste really good, right? So there's a couple reasons why brands use natural flavors. And it's so deceptive to me. One is because they want you to consume more of it. So a natural flavor, so I now have a very sophisticated palate, like anything that has a natural flavor, it lingers and it makes you want more. So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's much cheaper than using the real thing. So we have a strawberry shortcake bar. We have a banana nut bar that actually just sold out. But we use bananas, right? We use strawberries, which are much more expensive to use. And it's not going to give that same very artificial or very like concentrated taste that consumers are used to. So when people try our strawberry shortcake bar, they're like, oh wait, this like tastes like strawberries. Like it smells like strawberries, but it's not like overpowering strawberry. And what they mean is it's not a flavor
it's
that's
real.
It's real, right? It's actual food. So I don't love the natural flavor halo. And I feel like a lot of even better for you brands really most better for you brands rely on natural flavors to get something lower in sugar. So to me, that was the first thing that had to go out the door. I don't mind using sugar. Like we have 2 to 3 grams of sugar in our nut butter cups and 2 to 3 grams of sugar in our bars as well too. So all naturally occurring from nuts and fruits and seeds and all of that. But it's really, really challenging to combat this natural flavor halo. So that's my the big 2 non-negotiables, low in sugar, simple ingredients. And then I love to infuse these better for you, nutrient dense superfoods in. So like cinnamon or cacao or maca. So it's kind of this like trifecta that builds B.T.R. At the same time, that is a mouthful, right? To explain to retailers, a lot of brands have one thing that their platform lives on, and we have 3. So it does become a bit challenging. And how we do that is we position ourselves specifically to how the consumer wants. So most consumers like really resonate very strongly with like low sugar and simple ingredients. So that's usually what we play with. We do, our bars have all these amazing superfoods in them. We have noticed that people are not coming to us for that. Like I love that. Maybe like the early adopters, like, the 10, 15% of our customer base that's like, oh, I love reishi. This is great. Like I want this bar because it has reishi. Most people want the bar because it's low in sugar, it has 10 grams of protein, it doesn't have junk in it, and it tastes good. Like it's just so simple to consumers, and we want to simplify. We have been simplifying our message as we go deeper and deeper into retail. So, but those are our 3, like that's our platform that we've built the brand on.
Yeah, I definitely know what you mean about it's hard to go simple because when you're trying to do things right, there's so many things that you're making decisions on and maybe, paying more for or putting extra work in to get it right that you want to communicate all those things to consumer, but to your point, when you communicate everything, you communicate nothing. So just picking the most important thing either for you as the brand or the most important thing for your consumer on that product line or whatever, and just leaning in on that heavily is
exactly.
a
That is
good
exactly
strategy.
what we're going for.
Sounds like you're heading in the right direction there. But you were mentioning the price of monk fruit being, it almost sounded like 50x or something compared to like stevia. But you mentioned the date sugar for chocolate. Is that much more affordable? You didn't mention like price of that. Is that part of the reason you're choosing that? Is maybe not only the flavor, but also the price is better?
Yeah. So the flavor was really important because there is, and I can also go on a soapbox forever about chocolate and the chocolate industry, but there is where you source your cacao from is really critical. So we source our cacao liquor from Ecuador, which has a nuttier, bolder profile as opposed to a bitter profile. Because if we're going to go no added sugar, lower in sugar than our competitors, there are a lot of chocolate brands that do that, but then the product is so bitter that people might try it once and they just don't return. So our chocolate is very special because we actually hand make it. So most chocolate companies that are more mainstream at this point, they buy chocolate that is mass produced in some type of other facility, usually overseas, that as the liquor and the cocoa butter is already combined and they just use it in their product. And it's really important that we scale, how we're scaling chocolate is that we do not do that because our chocolate has dates in it. So we use organic dates that are ground up and that gives it an extra note of sweetness, which just makes it a little bit more like caramelly. It's without actually adding sugar. So that is really important to me that and it's only 2 grams of total sugar from dates, which is a fruit. So that's why we do that. It is actually it's more affordable than monk fruit, but it is not more affordable than like a cane sugar or a brown sugar or something like that. It's definitely, dates are pretty pricey, but when you're starting to use these, natural sweeteners, like honey is also pricey and maple syrup is also pricey, but those are added sugar. So for us, we wanted something that was low glycemic, something that was diabetic friendly and not going to spike blood glucose levels. So that's why we went with dates. Plus the flavor profile just makes the chocolate. I'm going to have to send you some chocolate. It's very special. We're out of stock. So for our actual website and on Amazon, because it's the heat of summer and we've had such demand in airports and in retail, we did a little different approach this year. It's not that we're out of stock. It's just that it is very expensive to ship on ice and to customize every single D2C order. So we've been focusing on getting the chocolate deeper and deeper into retail and food service. And then in the, cooler months, it will be a little bit easier for us to ship D2C and to focus on like a September to May for D2C and Amazon going really hard, but really just having the chocolate in retail nationwide year round to give people the opportunity to have it. And we don't charge for shipping. So it's chocolate is its own operational fun bag of fun. So
I've definitely had clients shipping like things like chocolate or ice cream or frozen, foods.
I don't even know how frozen
so challenging
frozen
and expensive. Right. Or even depending on like the pandemic, like I wasn't thinking about this because everyone heard about different supply chain shortages during the pandemic. But when I was talking to Rachel Drury from Daily Harvest, she was saying one of the hardest things about the pandemic was the dry ice shortages because they have to ship their products on dry ice, but so did the vaccines. So all of a sudden, all the dry ice supply was taken up by vaccines. So there's all these little challenges of every different channel that you're in, of course, but like D2C has some of those challenges where, shipping prices go through the roof all of a sudden, or the materials you need to ship are just gone. And with something like chocolate, I think consumers don't always appreciate this, that, when you ship a box of chocolate, you hopefully want it to show up not melted. But when it's 100 degrees in Arizona and you're shipping to Arizona, well, there's got to be some dry ice packs, something in there to protect the chocolate.
Our customers, especially in warmer regions, they love the product. So we did a couple of custom shipments yesterday to Scottsdale because I was like, okay, well, we got to get these out. And these are some, because our subscriptions, so if you're a subscriber, this is where the D2C loyal customer base comes. We're still going to ship to you because you are a loyal subscriber. So if you're part of our Subscribe and Save program, you're going to get your chocolate. So, but a lot of people love their chocolate in Arizona, Texas, and Florida. So we have a whole system that we've built of like, okay, if X degrees, ship with this many cold packs. If Y degrees, ship with this many cold packs. And we don't have a 3PL. So it's another unique thing about us. So is we want to create jobs. So we want to build out our own 3PL essentially. There's so many people in our supply chain, from our suppliers and farmers to our brokers, to our distributors, to the retailer, to the consumer, that like, if we can do something ourselves and own it and be able to, build out this labor force and create jobs for people and things like that people want, like are excited to do and be a part of the company from the ground up, we're going to do it. So we actually have our own warehouse. So it's, it allows us to customize things and do things. But yeah, we have a full-time warehouse manager. We have like a part-time temp team. So it's definitely a little bit different than, a traditional e-commerce, like, okay, I'm just going to have my orders come through. I never touch anything. I never see anything. I can work from anywhere. Like that is not the case with us.
Right. Yeah. So complicated. I think that's one thing that a lot of new entrepreneurs don't predict or expect is when you're building a D2C type of brand, there's a lot that goes into the logistics behind the scenes. And they think, oh, but I'll make so much bigger margins. It's like, sure, on the sale price, but there's going to be, cost of customer acquisition, cost of shipping, all these other kind of things that'll fluctuate that you might have to eat money on sometimes. And maybe if you're going to be your own 3PL, like you mentioned, then there's all these other staff costs and so on and so forth that kind of cut into the margin. So it's a lot of work. So, being able to control it, like you're saying, and make smart decisions of what you'll ship when or how fast you'll ship it or whether it needs ice or something like that, you can kind of customize it it takes more work to customize it, but you can also customize it to be more efficient and affordable.
Exactly.
Nice. Another thing you mentioned that you kind of riffed on for a little bit was the natural flavors, which I always giggle when people mention that because I remember hearing a long time ago, I feel like I validated it at one point, but I haven't recently, so maybe don't quote me on this, but I remember hearing that like natural flavors in terms of like a vanilla flavor was created from beaver anal glands or something like that. So whenever I tell people that story, they're like, what the hell? I didn't know I was eating that, but I know there's like lots of other things that are just woven into food. And I feel like maybe the reason it's labeled natural flavors instead of the real thing is because otherwise people would never buy the product if they knew it was actually in it. I also wonder if it's like partly, proprietary information sometimes that they don't want to share of like how they like finished the product or got that exact trademark flavor.
Totally.
Anyway, so what are your thoughts? Am I correct on some of the gross ingredients? Do you feel like that's why they're hiding it?
Yeah, you're correct on everything. And I've heard more recently that, so this type of vanillin, which you're referring to, which is beaver anal glands, used to be, I feel like it's gotten better. And I do feel like the flavor industry has gotten better, maybe from like 15, 20 years ago. But my thing is that the majority of these natural flavors are in a solvent, and the solvent, which is usually the main ingredient, which is not disclosed. And a lot of those solvents are like rapeseed oils. So if someone has like, or canola oil, and someone has, a sensitivity to any type of food, like it's just not shared. Like, I think that's my biggest issue is just tell me what's in it. Maybe I'm fine eating beaver anal glands. Apparently they are very floral. Like,
if it's delicious,
some people might not even care, right? Like, and that's even like, we consume natural flavors in our house. I try to, try my best to avoid it, but like, it's really impossible. So, and if there's something I really like and I'm like, okay, this is good, the rest of the ingredients are on point, like, it's fine, but I just like would love to know what's in it. And some of it is proprietary. I do think that I don't think anyone is going to compete with a flavor house. Like, there's a couple of flavor houses in the country and be like, I'm going to, go into a lab and make my own flavors, and I'm going to compete with this massive, like,
have a warehouse full of beavers. Yeah, I'm going to make my own vanilla.
Probably not. I feel like it's fair for the consumer to know. And that is where it is. And there are some brands that actually do share, like, here's the breakdown of what's in the natural flavor. And I love that because I'm like, great, now I feel better. Like, it's more of the fact that you put the word natural on it. And you don't see this. I actually saw this with a competitor, a competing bar brand that really gets under my skin because they use sugar alcohols and they actually have a laxative effect warning. Some people might know the name of the brand from just listening to this. They have a laxative effect warning on the packaging. And they have two different variations of their product, one that they sell in the States and one that they sell in Europe.
Oh man, yeah.
And in Europe, they do not use it's not called natural flavors. It's called flavor, which I feel like is more accurate. And I still think consumers might be like, okay, flavor is flavor, whatever. Like they're adding something to it, cool. I'm sure some consumers are not going to care either way. But the fact that we use the word natural to describe the flavor versus artificial flavors is challenging because they're basically made in the same way. One of the ingredients, the natural ingredient flavors obviously have to have something natural in the product. And that's the difference between artificial, which is 100% lab made, but they're all manipulated. Like, anyway, just tell me what's in the products. That's how I feel like our food system will already be moving to this better world, is if we just become more transparent about what's in our products. But I think that's on the brand, right? And to me, like, we never come at this as like, oh, as a consumer, you need to be more educated, because I didn't know about this until I got into the industry. So we never say like, oh, well, you should, consumers need to do this and consumers need to do that. It's really the brand that needs to make a more concerted effort to just use better ingredients that are of more quality. That's it in my opinion.
I love connecting people and sharing resources. So let's take a pause from this conversation for a brief intro to a podcast you might be interested in.
Hey, this is Eric, the founder of the Climify podcast. What's Climify? Climify is an educational podcast that connects climate experts to design educators, students, and the design curious to bridge design practice and climate action to inspire listeners to envision and create a sustainable future. This season, we are trying to change the system. We're speaking with impact leaders at the intersection of climate action and design to change oppressive systems that limit us and hurt the environment. We'll provide insight, inspiration, practical resources, and tangible ways to measure impact. Each episode ends with a call to action, a design prompt from our experts, encouraging everyone to challenge how the world is designed and to become change agents in their own lives. You can subscribe to Climify at Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
And now, back to the conversation. I would also feel like if you're creating a food company, if you don't feel comfortable sharing what the ingredients are in that product because you're embarrassed by it or you think people will think it's gross, then why are you putting it in the product in the first place? Like maybe just start there. Like if it needs to be hidden, maybe don't use that. But not to complicate this even more, but I've recently also been seeing organic flavors listed on things, right? Because there was a problem of artificial, and then it's like, okay, well, it's natural, and that makes people feel a little better. But the squishiness of the word natural is undefined. But now let's say you are actually a certified organic brand and you use organic flavors. Does that basically mean it's the same kind of thing as natural flavors? It just happens to be organic certified version of it?
So I do think actually, so that is where I usually make an exception, where I see organic flavors. I'm like, okay, this is because you have to be organic compliant. So it's in like all of our products. So all of our bars are non-GMO project verified. Our chocolate's going to be non-GMO project verified. When you have to go through these bodies, it definitely is more rigorous. So there's going to be certain things that, like, I still don't know what's in it exactly, but I do feel a little bit better. Like some flavor houses are now doing things that are like vegan or allergen, like certain allergens cannot be in the flavor. I feel much better with those because then I'm like, great, at least like I'm very sensitive to certain seed oils and have always been, even before the seed oil craze.
You started the whole movement.
It was just something I just really, when I was younger, I used to like break out every time we like fried something in vegetable oil and certain things. Like this was like decades ago. So I have always been like an olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil household. And now this whole thing about like, oh, no seed oils is trending. I'm like, well, that's great for us, but it's just something that we've always like been accustomed to. But that's my biggest thing is like, I wish the flavor would like tell me like what oil is in this, because it's got to be in some type of solvent. But I do like that when brands use organic or they use like top 9 allergen free, that at least makes me feel like, okay, there's not just random junk in here, and at least they're being transparent about it. So yeah, so I definitely give those more of a thumbs up.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I agree with you there that I feel like transparency is a nice way to shift to a better nation. Is if people at least know what they're putting in their body, they're making conscious decision rather than unconsciously. And that's part of why I'm a advocate for things like organic as well, is because I know there's, people who are like, oh, well, only eat the, dirty dozen organic, or organic doesn't mean anything anymore because different companies like stretching the term or whatever. But hypothetically speaking, when you're buying something organic, there's a little bit more understanding of like things that aren't in there, right? A little bit more trust into what's putting into it, but also like you're not squeezing in unexpected stuff. Like nobody goes to the store and is like, I'm going to buy this food product, and I hope there's a bunch of extra chemicals in there that I don't know about that might be causing me major health problems like glyphosate, right? So at least when it's organic, not obviously there's some drift of non-organic farms to organic or whatever, but like hypothetically speaking, you can start to assume that you're not ingesting unnecessary chemicals that you didn't know were there.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard now, right? It's just so hard because things are getting blended, but yes. And it's, I think that the non-GMO label is also a really good example of that as well. Is, a lot of times people will say like, well, I saw this product and it looked really good and, it was low sugar but it had this statement underneath it where a disclaimer that says like contains bioengineered ingredients. Like what does that mean? Like that can't be that bad, right? Yeah. And if you're seeing the stamp of approval from, USDA Organic, or you're seeing non-GMO Project Verified, or you're seeing certified gluten-free, like you're seeing bodies that's why we're also like, it's expensive, right? So sometimes like some of our farms can't get those certifications, right? But like this whole year we've always been non-GMO, but we are paying now big bucks to certify all of our products non-GMO Project Verified. So, nice. And that sometimes comes with time, but that seal does make people feel better that there's no bioengineered ingredients in there. And it's something that, I like the fact that more and more companies are moving to being able to show that, like, a better for you companies, that they're doing this. And I'm hoping these certifying bodies also get a little more affordable too for new and emerging brands that can, and certain farms and local farmers that can't get those certifications. But I think we're moving in that direction, which I like to see. So.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Better Nation and the kind of cost of doing things right, that's one thing that I just wish we could flip in this country, is instead of charging the people who are doing things right more money, and instead of subsidizing crappy food that were, corn sugars and stuff that we're stuffing into every product because it's cheap and subsidized or whatever, why aren't we shifting that and instead saying, you know what, if you're not going to use organic, then you're going to pay the extra price to get certified not organic, or to get permission to not use organic. Or if we're going to subsidize something, it should be better for you foods that aren't just like spiking people's blood sugar and causing diabetes, right? Like those simple shifts in our culture would have a dramatic change, because a lot of our health problems are due to our crappy food, and our crappy food is due to like crappy policies around food, where we're like prioritizing the wrong things. Like it just costs so much and takes so much extra work to not poison people. And we have to pay all these extra fees for it. And then we have to charge our customers more for it. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you should have to, kind of like cigarettes, where they're taxed heavily. You have to put this warning on the box. Like that should be, if I want to go eat Cheetos, I should pay $20 a bag, and there should be giant warnings on it that say this product will kill you. But hey, indulge if you like it. That's fine. Yeah. That's fine, right?
Or like Red 40 right on the front, and it's 100%. And I dream of that kind of world. And I talk to my husband about this all the time, because I'm like, how did big tobacco? How did things change with big tobacco? And I think of like all of these PSAs, but it really came down to the taxes, right? Like that's really what changed the way that people thought about smoking cigarettes. I'm a 90s baby, so born in 88 and grew up very much, had smokers in my family, like grew up, that was just a thing, right? And then as, society changed and things got more and more taxed, and then there were places where smokers could be and non-smokers, and things, people were just like, this isn't worth it anymore, right? Like that. Right. It's just so difficult to do with food. And, growing up in New York, I remember that a policy with like, there was like a sugar tax on something with certain like soft drinks. And I think I'm pretty confident it backfired. So it's and I'm always thinking about this, because how did like Beauty Counter, I like to look into the beauty space because beauty is obviously like way more advanced than food and beverage. And Beauty Counter and the team there went to Washington, D.C. And they, even though Beauty Counter, ended up coming down and so many things happened there, but it's the mission behind it and what they were trying to do and what they were trying to do with certain chemicals that they weren't using in their beauty products, and being this transparent beauty brand, at least from an ingredient mission, purpose and mission. It was really cool. And I would love to do that one day with other food companies, is really,
Nice.
Take this a little bit more, not that we want to talk about politics with everything going on in the world now, but be able to make a larger impact, hopefully on a policy level. And that is something I dream of, one day, hopefully being able to do.
Yeah, that would be amazing. And I know like there are people working on, changing farm bills and this and that and whatever, and doing the work out there. But I feel like we're making tiny little baby steps or putting Band-Aids on the root cause when we could just fix the root cause. Like, why don't we just take a look at these policies that were set up a long time ago for a specific reason, realize they don't serve us anymore, and just get rid of it? Granted, there's going to be some people hurt in that process, but just create a path of transition. Like all those corn farmers can transition to farming something else. It's fine. Just give them lead time, right?
Right.
So
you need enough time to be able to make this happen. And people, I hate to say this, but just it ends up being where we see this even with like aligning with the correct investors and aligning with the correct VCs and finding the right partners. We have had people in conversations that have gone like this. Well, Ashley, we need to get your COGS down because you need to shave a penny off the dollar. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that, right? Like, not going to do that at the cost of the customer, right? Like, that's what it comes down to. And it ends up being just so people can have, a little more. And it's always a little more becomes a little more, it compounds. But my big thing, and this is something, I don't know if I'm naive for saying this, but it's happening in schools already, but I would love to see this happen in hospitals where it's like no more than 25% of hospital cafeteria food and vending machines and hospital like gift shops and kiosks has junk food. No more than 25%. There's tons of better for you brands, or there's just no reason why, especially doctors and nurses who are pulling triple shifts. And, there's absolutely no reason why. There's better for you energy drinks. There's better for you coffee. There's tons of better for you options out there. It's big food is so deeply entrenched in hospitals that it's like so hard to make a dent. And we are slightly like we distribute through US Foods. So we're in about 50 hospitals around the country and trying to grow that. But it's up to the hospital to make that change, right? So it's so decentralized as opposed to having more of this, this policy. And that's something that I really, want to fight for, because it just seems like a no-brainer. It's happening in schools already. Why can't we put this in hospitals? Why can't we have this more in like elderly care facilities? Like, I just don't understand why places that people need it the most, it's not accessible. So
I was totally thinking that when you were talking about vending machines earlier. It's like I comment on that same thing all the time, that it's ridiculous that, again, the health industry or like schools where people probably need their nutrition and have no choice, right? They're stuck with eating at that place most of the time. Whereas the rest of us, we get to make a choice when we go to the grocery store or even the airport. There's more options than a school or a hospital.
Yeah.
So in those places where people have no choice and probably need to pay attention to their nutrition, we give them garbage. Like, what is that about? It is just, the only thing I can think is just pure corruption. Like corruption, or I can't justify, or I can't think to myself the health industry doesn't care. I assume they care, but to your point, big food or whatever is just embedded in and has these big contracts or whatever. And like, there must be some reason they can't get out of it, because somebody at the hospitals have to care. Somebody at these schools has to care, but we just keep giving people garbage. I don't know why.
And that's
it's like you're in here for health problems. Here, have another health problem.
it's sick care. That's what I've heard. We have, a whole group of registered dietitians and naturopathic doctors and, people that help vet our products for us before we bring anything to market. And one of our registered dietitians I'm very close to, a good friend of mine. And, she actually lost both of her parents as well too. And we talk about this all the time. It's sick care, right? It's not health care. It's not well care. It's, and that's why a lot of these like alternative healthcare providers are popping up everywhere. So everywhere, we're seeing a ton in California. Last year I actually went for a Prenuvo scan, which is like a proactive MRI scan, which, scans your whole body and takes a look at like any inflammation. I mean, phenomenal, but also not very accessible. Like definitely had to dip into my life savings for that. And how can we as our food system do better and be able to partner with these different alternative healthcare providers? And that's my big like goal for B.T.R. As much as I want to see B.T.R. in every household and, every Whole Foods and Costco and all of the things, it's, those are amazing stepping stones to get to the fact that I really want us to fix our healthcare system, right? Like, and the fact that like any food related diseases don't need to be here, right? Like that's the thing. And there's a ton of people, obviously naturopathic doctors on Instagram and TikTok, and really starting to go viral for being like, well, if we just fixed this. And there was a statistic that I think it's like if we remove 20% of added sugar from our diet and from our food system, that we can reduce, I think it was something like 700,000, cases of diabetes. And it's like, it's literally by just reducing 20% of added sugar. Like it's just,
oh my God, wow.
It's kind of mind blowing. And don't quote me on that. I definitely use it. I've used it in a lot of my pitch competitions to show the impact. So I have to figure out if it was 700,000 diabetes or heart disease, but I think it was diabetes. Right. Yeah. But it is 20% added sugar, and that's it. Like little changes. Like it doesn't have to be like we're changing everything all at once. We're taking people's sugar away. Like that's not what we're trying to do. We're just trying to, I don't even want to say everything in moderation, because there are just some things that are not even food. Like it's not even food that you like, it's not real. So, but our food system, right? Instead of fearing fruit and sweet potatoes and things like that, like we should be going back to real food and looking for real food in the packaged products that we eat.
I mean, I don't remember when the quote originated, but that gets brought up a lot of times on the show of let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food, right? Like if we, speaking of root causes, if we went back to just making food healthy again, then we wouldn't need so much health care or sick care like you mentioned. And I'm not a big conspiracy theory person, but it's hard not to think somebody's intentionally breaking this system by how stupid and illogical it's set up, right? Like the amount of money this country has to pay to take care of sick people, yet we're giving subsidies to the food that makes people sick. Like, how can you not see a tie between that, right? Like somebody's doing this intentionally. How do we get them out of power? How do we take the power back,
Yeah. And it's, I mean, and it's deep, like it is deep. And, I am seeing this actually as being, a 3.5-year-old brand in our food system. We see, there's just so many players in the middle until you finally get to the consumer, and everyone takes margin and everyone throws chargebacks out there. And it eventually can hurt small brands. And like we are growing very fast, and we have, an amazing cap table of investors and people like that believe in our mission. So we've got this. But at the same time, I see a lot of my colleagues who have small brands and they're like, I'm throwing in the towel. Like this is, it's a messy industry. Yeah. And there's so many like deep interwoven relationships that are like a century-year old that need to come down. And I'm with you. Like I am not a conspiracy theorist at all, but there is like, I look around sometimes and I'm like, how is this a thing? Like, how do I still see Cheetos, Pop-Tarts, and like, popcorn that's not better for you popcorn in this vending machine that has been here since my father was doing chemo years ago? Like this is like 5 years later, 6 years later. How is this a thing? And no one knows. No one knows, but it's
I mean, the only answer is like, as they say in the true crime TV shows or whatever, you follow the money. Like, so if you follow the money, that's probably where the answer is to all of our questions here. It's yes, it is being done on purpose because it's very profitable. And until
cheap
it's
food
not
is
profitable, or until the government steps in and makes better food profitable for big companies or something like that, then we're probably stuck here and need to rely on folks like yourself to try to change it. But just imagine how much different the world would look if some big food companies like Coca-Cola or General Mills or something said, you know what, from here forward, we're going to act like these crazy startup entrepreneurs and say, we're going to have some standards, and we're not going to, I don't care if we have $20 million or $200 million a year in sales on this product. This product is horrible for people and we're removing it. Or, you know what?
Well,
we're going to redo it and change all the ingredients. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like if you could have some of these big players just make some big changes, it could fix everything. But then people are going to lose money, like insurance companies and everyone else. I don't know. It's just crazy. It's complicated, but we could go on this for a long time. And I realize we're getting close to the end of our time.
I love that Big Food is looking at new and emerging companies, though, to like come into their portfolio, though. Right. I do love that because it gives new and emerging brands that are better for you space now, because it's very hard. It's hard for us to go into like hospitals nationwide, but Big Food has contracts with hospitals. And if we were there or other better for you companies are under these Big Food umbrellas, they're like, okay, well, we're going to take one facing out of Snickers and we're going to throw in a facing of this better for you or Hue, right? Like better for you chocolate, better. It's happening. It's just much slower. But the big change would be like, we're going to completely remove an entire food that we know is poisoning society, and we're not going to make it anymore, or we're going to make it so much better. I don't know if that will ever happen. I dream of a better food system, but I think it's going to be, it's so complex, but I'm just so excited that I have opportunities like this to talk about our mission and to be able to it's a privilege to be able to kind of fight for what we believe in every day. And we're taking baby steps. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I just was thinking like if all corporations acted like Patagonia or something like that, the world would look so different, right? Where they're like most corporations would be completely unwilling to give up profit, right? Like profit's their number one goal. But a company like Patagonia is like, what, a $10 million, refund from the government or something, like, okay, here you go. And they give it to nonprofits. Like, we don't need the money.
People, planet, there is, it's a great mission there.
Okay. So again, we could probably geek out on that for another couple hours, it sounds like, but I'm going to flip it to something a little more positive. I saw recently that you had a Blue Bottle collaboration. Can you talk about how that came to be?
Oh, it's so cool. So Blue Bottle is an amazing partner. They actually reached out to us, and it's been amazing. So we originally, back in November, we launched one of our cinnamon cookie dough bar in Blue Bottle cafes. So they're starting to have more grab and go items, and they were testing it with a couple of brands, and we were one of them, which was such an honor. At the same time, we were collaborating with them to co-create this really amazing. It's like a chai spice bar, and it's phenomenal. It is flying. It's something different for us because we have our cinnamon cookie dough bar and we have our dark chocolate brownie bar, but this flavor profile is literally like chai in a bar, and it's perfectly fitting for Blue Bottle cafes. So for us, we really like we would love to do more outbound, and we actually get a lot of inbound. Like a lot of our opportunities come because like we had a reel go viral, or I was on a podcast. Like I try to go on a lot of podcasts to share the story, to share the mission. So people are like, oh, it's not another bar. It's not another bar. Like there's so much nutrition and so much goodness packed into this brand. And I just need to make sure that I'm communicating that and our whole team is communicating that. So when we do that, we just see tons of new retailers and new alternative channels flock to us. And it's just been so cool to work with them. And it's just a phenomenal company.
That's really cool. I think that's one of my favorite things. I've been seeing the upward trend of collaborations, and I'm just a big collaboration, whether it's communities working together to solve problems together, whether it's brands working together to improve their mission, or whether it's even just fun product ideas like this, where it's like, you know what? Let's do something together and make something cool. Like you've got pickles and we've got nuts. Let's put them together into a cool pickle nut mix or a chai bar. That sounds delicious. I want one right now.
Yes. Daily Crunch's pickles. Dill pickle flavor is my favorite. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's awesome. So again, we could go on for a while, but since we're already at like an hour-ish here, I'm going to just shift us into a kind of rapid round question segment. What's your favorite less healthy indulgence? Like, I know you make healthier foods, but I'm sure there's some items you sneak in every once in a while.
Absolutely. And it's, I'm not I don't have a huge sweet tooth. I'm more of like a meal person. So I love, my mac and cheese, like homemade, like all of that. But when I think about like indulgence, I'm going to eat like a homemade cookie every time. I love cookies. It is one of my dreams. Eventually, I would love to make a better for you sandwich cookie. It's a dream of mine. But I love cookies, but I like homemade. And if we're going to, prefer like coconut sugar or a maple syrup or something like that. But if it's something that is like, once again, I know what's in it. I don't care. Like, I don't care if there's 20 grams of sugar in it. I'm going to consume it. One of my closest friends makes products that are super transparent and clean and amazing, but they're high in sugar. And I'm like, it's fine. I want it. So it's,
well,
yeah. So
that's the thing is when you're being conscious of it, right? When you're paying attention to what ingredients you're consuming on your daily food, you can be more indulgent with your occasional treat.
Exactly. It's not because 90% of the time or 80% of the time you're eating foods that feel good, and it's not like I'm over consuming. I think that's the thing, because a lot of sugar, like if I ate like sugar throughout the whole day, I would just be on this, sugar high, sugar crash. But if I'm having like a little treat, a couple bites of something that's like amazing, indulgent, and super rich, that's it. Like I'm good. I'm good with like 3 bites. I don't need like 100 of them. Whereas, cookies that are processed with lots of sugar, that have the artificial flavor or natural flavor, they make you want more, even if you're like satisfied, because it attracts the taste buds.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that, but it makes sense. Just a quick follow up on that. So what's your favorite type of homemade cookie?
So I'm pretty boring. I mean, chocolate chips. I love snickerdoodle. So a lot of the things that even in our portfolio, we have like a snickerdoodle almond cup, we have an almond butter cup, we have a cinnamon cookie dough bar. I'm a huge cinnamon fan because cinnamon is just such an easy way to get sweetness and with goodness, right? Cinnamon has so many amazing antioxidants and so many good properties in the body, but it tastes freaking amazing. So it's like, it's just one of those, it's like cacao. It's one of those that like really does well. That's like a real food ingredient. So I love anything with cinnamon sugar on it. So.
Nice. Love it. Cool. Okay. So entrepreneurship is stressful. And when you're fighting for a mission and needing to be resilient through all the fires you're constantly putting out, that's, just a lot of work. So how do you practice self-care?
The short answer, the more podcasts I do, the more I feel like I'm like just so blunt and straight to the point. I don't that's probably not the best question for me. So I guess here's how I practice self-care. I have a 2-year-old. I allocate time where I like no phone, no computer. And when I say no phone, like it's there, but like just not actively checking every single email that's coming in. And that is my family time. And, that's usually on Saturdays after I post on Instagram. And it's usually my Saturday afternoons is like, that is my time. And I'll, work Saturday night. I don't think there's really a way when you're so like really trying to like grow and opportunities are just flying your way. I think it's really hard to practice turning off or like balance. I think everyone, and I also love this, right? So I think you have to, like, if you love it, it doesn't feel like work. There's plenty of days that do feel like work, but most of the time it doesn't feel like work. So the way I practice self-care though, is like I spend quality time with my family without like talking about work, without thinking about, half my brain might be on work, but that's pretty much it. And I do try to get movement every day. So California, nice, beautiful weather. It's nice and easy for me to get outside and to move my body, even if it's like 10, 15 minutes, but that's pretty much it. So I wish I could say I ate super healthy, and I eat our products. So I always feel much better when I eat B.T.R Nation 2 to 3 times a day. But I'm looking at my lunch, which I didn't even finish. I just forgot about it. Right. So like, it's kind of, so I wish I could say like my food was in a good place. But I do know it's so funny. A lot of healthy wellness entrepreneurs, they're like, oh wait, did I eat breakfast? So I do have to work a little bit harder at it, but family time, movement, those are my non-negotiables to like help clear the brain. So.
Yeah. And part of the reason I've been asking that question recently is because I also need to work on self-care, because I'm just like you. Like,
I wish I had more.
Kind of perfectly happy to work, all day and over weekends, et cetera. But I realize that's probably not the best long-term strategy. Like that you can go through seasons of like, we're just really busy trying to fulfill this order or hit this deadline. Yes. I'm going to have to skip all that self-care, but like year after year, month after month, like there should be something. So I'm looking for some good ideas, but I do like the move your body, eat a little healthy. For me, one of the things I try to go back to for fundamentals is just getting enough sleep. Like that
yes.
To me,
that is
feels
right.
like the core, right? If you can't do anything else, get sleep.
Yes. And I've actually been saying that because we have 2 interns that joined us for the summer. And I remember myself in college where I was like, ooh, like I'm going to work super hard. I'm never going to sleep. And it was like this badge of honor that I would wear and be like, how many hours? Because I was pre-med. So pre-med biochemistry, it's like, how many hours did you sleep? And I was like, 2. And they would be like, I slept for nothing. And I'm like, now I think back to that and I'm like, oh my goodness, that is terrible. I love sleep. I don't sleep enough, but I do think that that is a huge, like if you feel well rested, like you are ready to tackle the day. I think everyone's like criteria for how much sleep they need could be different,
Right.
but I think that that's, sleep definitely over, family time and sleep.
Right. Yeah, totally. I mean, because it's where your body heals itself and you'll be more mentally prepared to actually be efficient during the day instead of like mind spinning, et cetera. So it just feels like the right thing to prioritize if you got nothing else, or if you can't do anything else. Okay. With that said, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received or maybe just received recently?
Oh, there's so many. Like for entrepreneurship or life in general. I'll go with life in general. So
Whatever,
I just answered my
strikes
question.
you.
I know so many people say this, but comparison is the thief of joy. It really is. It's, I am 100% guilty. There's probably not a day that goes by that I'm like, oh, well, I'm comparing myself to this company, but I now at this point in this age and I'm like, this is great. And I'm just so excited for them, but we're running a different path, right? There's also, you have to run your own race. So, in the very beginning when would look at companies that are like 5 years older than us, or they have venture capital, right? Or they have a celebrity, that just is such a different world that you have to do what is in your wheelhouse. And even comparing us now to how we were when we first started without any venture capital, without any capital whatsoever, besides my personal investment, it's totally different, right? So I think you stay in your lane, because I do have to say that LinkedIn can be a really scary place, including for myself who posts a lot of the bright and shiny on LinkedIn. It's a scary place because everyone's comparing themselves. So my big piece of feedback for anyone that's scrolling on Instagram or TikTok is, it's easier said than done, but notice your triggers. So are you going to your phone because you're looking to compare yourself? Because I think sometimes people are looking to feel something, right? They're looking to feel a sense of camaraderie, oh, well, this person, had a crappy weekend and I had a crappy weekend, and it's we can commiserate together. And sometimes that is still comparison. So really just being in a place, which is very hard to do when you're running a business, but having laser focus on your life, your purpose. We get one body here, make it count for you. It's going to look so different than for someone else. So it's just laser focus on your purpose, but you have to find your purpose first. So that's two pieces of advice. Find your purpose and then live the hell out of it.
I love both those pieces of advice. They're both kind of things I've been pushing a lot lately through social media, or thinking about myself as how do we just become the best versions of ourselves? And like you said, with comparison is the thief of joy. It kind of some people will be like, well, if you're not comparing yourself to the people above you and working to get there, how are you ever going to be in their same level, or follow the path of this person because they're successful, right? But that's the way I kind of been processing it, is that's kind of like an apple saying, I wish I was more like an orange, right?
Yes,
and then
exactly.
If an apple tries really hard to be an orange, and it's going to be a kind of a crappy orange, and it will never quite be right. Instead of being the best apple it can be, and having that category of apple, because if apple's not going to be an apple, who's going to be an apple? Now the world doesn't have apples, and we love apples, right? So by trying really hard to be more like someone else, or compare yourself to other people's weird, unique paths, you're depriving the world of your true essence. So if we can just focus on being the best version of ourselves possible, it doesn't really matter if XYZ company is bigger than yours, or this other person's further along on their career or whatever, because those are all completely different journeys. They can't compare themselves to you, so quit comparing. And that's something I struggle with, but working on.
Same. And there's looking for inspiration, and then looking to we never refer to ourselves as the X of this, of X, of Y. So I hear this a lot with tech companies, where it's we're the next WeWork of XYZ, right? Or we're the, the AI company of this, like they compare themselves because they need a benchmark, because we all need a benchmark in a category to compare ourselves to. But the reality is that we have such unique differentiators, and a lot of success is also contingent on time, right? Like, I don't want to say luck, because luck does have something to do with it, but I feel like it's the right time, the right place, the right moment in the market. Like, there's so much that goes into it besides like flawless execution. So the only thing we can control is what we can control, which is the execution piece. So I'm with you though. I do think that like an apple's not an orange, right? So it's you got to be yourself throughout this whole journey. So I love that.
Right. Yeah. And I think the more we can just remind people that when you're not doing that, you're literally depriving the world, right? Like, yeah. I know we often are like, oh, but I wish I was more like XYZ, but no, you should wish to be more like you, because you're the only one we have as a world, or your family or whatever. So fill that role and do it the best you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So who's an impact-driven leader you admire, and why?
So I live in the food and beverage space. So I always, one of my role models and inspirations is Cara Golden of Hint Water. I was actually on her podcast. It was the fangirl moment. 100%, like just removing, trying to take on like big beverage and big soda and changing the entire landscape. Before, like, beverage has always been like cool and trendy, and it's just so much cool. Beverages are just so much sexier than snacks. When you hold a can of something or you hold a beverage, it's just so sexy in comparison to like when you hold a bar. So even our bar is exactly, there you go. So it just looks so much better. And then, we're changing that in bars. People do love to hold B.T.R bars, but Cara Golden 100%. Oh my God, you do have the chocolate.
Yeah, I got some samples. I was looking too. It does have the dates in it.
We sent you some of our last samples. Okay.
Right. I snuck in.
Snuck it in. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a good example. Just somebody taking on the big food industry and trying to make change, especially in the beverage space. It's really difficult, because that's where, the Pepsi and Cokes and others are just like embedded and have basically own the category. So trying to squeeze your way in there is difficult.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, and she does such a wonderful job at, speaking up and sharing her mission and really like giving other entrepreneurs platforms. It's amazing.
Yeah. Love it. Okay. So promise, last question here. This podcast is called Brands for a Better World. So what does a better world mean to you?
So it's really everything. I was thinking about this coming into this podcast recording, but honestly, it's everything that we were talking about, right? It's like flipping what our food system looks like on its head, and really giving us all the food that we deserve, as opposed to like the food that we make. And what's out there is, even if consumers don't know it yet and they want it, right? They want a better food system. And a lot of consumers are willing to pay for it, but they shouldn't have to. So it's trying to figure out a better world looks like accessibility, more opportunities for better for you products to be priced at the same product as, like, it's not like, I saw someone post on Instagram yesterday, like, it's not like brands, like better for you brands, want to make we're not making extra profit from it. We're just we like need to stay in business, right? So that is why, because these things cost more. Yeah. And that's it, right? It's just being able to make things accessible. That at my core is like, health should not just be like considered like hierarchical. It should be accessible to everyone. It's not a privilege, it's a right. And how do we make good food that right? And that is how I think of this better world, that hopefully we're all taking, baby steps to get there.
Right. And especially if you consider cost as a whole, like when you're eating a bunch of cheap garbage food, sure, maybe you're saving a little on your groceries, but you're paying a lot more for your healthcare or, whatever else. So I think getting more accessibly priced food, maybe by flipping some of the things we talked about, policies, whatever, would be great. But then there's also cost savings in eating better too. So it's like you said, if you can influence one part of the system, it ripples out to other parts, right? So
exactly, that ripple effect. That's what we're going for.
Awesome. Love it. So thanks for carving out a longer than expected time to geek out with me on the problems in the food industry and how we can change it. Appreciate that. And thanks for sending out samples before the deadline or the cutoff of not being able to ship. So appreciate that. And then thanks for just doing what you're doing to try to change the food system and build a better nation in terms of how we eat, so we can actually get back to letting food be our medicine.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Gage. This was wonderful. I could probably go for 2 more hours, but I won't do that. But thanks for having me. And this was so much fun.
Thanks for listening. To learn more about Ashley or her brand, visit btrnation.com. If you like this show, remember to help us grow by liking, reviewing, and sharing. If you're new here, don't forget we have over 100 episodes in the archive. Some might be called Evolve CPG, but it's the same show, so dig in for more goodness. If you consider yourself an impact-driven professional, join me over at impactdriven.community, where we're supporting each other's growth as impact leaders.